Hello. So this video is put together for my week 3 assignment of a peer-reviewed article that uses epidemiological methods to examine a health-related issue. In this case, we're going to be using diabetes. With obesity on the rise in America, there's no wonder as to why diabetes rates continue to climb. For this assignment, I will be covering this article, as you can see right here, called Prevalence of Diabetes and Associated Obesity in Pennsylvania Adults from 1995 to 2010. So the background, right? Diabetes is among one of the leading causes of a kidney failure. It can also lead to other health issues, such as damage to your heart, blood vessels, nerves, your eyes. It can increase the risk of heart disease and stroke. The list goes on forever. If poorly managed, diabetes can take a toll on your disease and stroke, and it can cause death over time. So there's different types of diabetes, one being more worse than the other. But for the sake of this research article, we're going to cover diabetes as a whole. HealthyPeople2020.gov states diabetes occurs when the body cannot produce enough insulin or can respond appropriately to insulin. Insulin is a hormone that the body needs to absorb and use glucose or sugar as fuel for the body's cells. Without a properly functioning insulin signaling system, the blood glucose sugar levels become elevated and other metabolic abnormalities occur, leading to the development of serious disabling complications. So, a little background for me as to why I follow this disease, I guess you can say, is that my father had bad diabetes and didn't really take care of himself, and I never understood the disease growing up. Um, and eventually, I kind of saw firsthand how all of this can lead to other complications and just deteriorate your body over time. It went from just being diabetes to high blood pressure, high cholesterol, amputation of limbs. It's just a horrible disease, and eventually it took his life at a very young age of 40. So this disease is real, and it's taken over our nation, which is why preventative measures and community education on this topic are very important. So the objective of this study that we're going to see was to collect data over time on adult Pennsylvanians from 1995 to 2010 and examine the trends in the prevalence and socio-demographic distributions of diabetes and the associations of diabetes with obesity. So the population in which the author seeks to generalize their finding is kind of self-reported, it talks about, or physician-reported diabetics adults in Pennsylvania from 1995 to 2010 using a, what do they call it, right here, behavioral risk factor surveillance survey. Okay. The type of study that they use for this article is a cross-sectional, and let's see, where's that? I found it earlier, right here. So the behavioral risk factor surveillance survey is a cross-sectional study, right? So I'm sorry, I lost myself. So it's an annual random digit dial telephone survey that was conducted by Pennsylvania State Health Department and the CDC on all self-reported adults at the age of 18 years or older. So the sample size during that time frame from 1995 to 2010 ended up being around a total of 121,867 adults. As far as their recruiting strategy, there was to narrow down the population. There really wasn't any strategy other than that survey itself of those that informed the study of their diabetes, their disease that they've been, diagnosed with. So that was kind of really pretty much it. And then there was a lot of inclusion criteria that came along with it. So the criteria included, diabetes that was assessed and it was based on a diagnosis of diabetes, their age, sex, race, height, their weight, education, and annual income were all some of the uh, different variables used, as you'll see right here. So diagnosis was determined on if a patient was, ever told they had diabetes. The age was broken down into coded brackets, which you'll see right here. 18 to 44 is considered young, 45 to 64 middle, 65 and up they considered old. And then obviously sex was broken down by male, female, and race was, white or non-white. The height and weight factor was kind of a self-reported number as well, and they used that to calculate the BMI. So kind of whatever the person, put on their survey is what the study went with, and that's how they based the BMI, so the body mass index. Um, and that was set at 18.5 to 24.9 being normal weight, and 25 to 29.9 being overweight, and then 30 and up being obese. So there was some exclusion in the criteria that I noticed, and participants that weren't ended up being calculated in the final analysis, which you'll see right here as well. So about 2,241 of those adults were not used in the study due to some missing data, or they reported they have pre-diabetes or borderline diabetes, but they weren't really sure or never really diagnosed with diabetes. So um, in order to kind of skew their numbers a little bit, the study ended up taking that grouping out, which left a total then of 119,626 adults. And another issue that you see in this next sentence, kind of, so the survey, when they send it out on an annual basis, I don't think they really kept track from what this is saying as to who they sent it to. So the problem with that was they may have recorded some of the same people each year, and like let's say for instance they mailed it to me one year, I filled it out, and then I was put in their study, but then I get the same letter the next year and I fill it out again and I get put in the study, then my numbers are going to continually be in this study instead of finding all the new participants that are diagnosed. So if you go down here to statistical analysis, so they used a multivariate analysis that incorporated all those variables we talked about earlier, that is specific to that behavioral risk factor surveillance survey. So, but specifically, they used a logistic regression model, and that was the PROC-R-Logist. And they used that by examining diabetes factors and the interactions of them during that specific time period. So they kind of broke it up. Here you'll see they kind of broke it up in five-year increments. Excuse me. So 95 to 2001 to '05, and then '06 to 2010, and that's kind of the scenario they used throughout this whole um, analysis project. Um, so they used that logistic regression multivariate, and for that specific period of time, and then after that, each independent variable, such as the race, sex, age, height, their weight, income, BMI, and education, were all tested for significance separately for each covariate by placing each variable sequentially in their code. So, kind of some of the results that they got from all that. Scroll down here, and you'll start seeing these tables, and we'll kind of go over that. And I'll talk about results as a whole, and then we'll just kind of breeze through the tables because it's the same thing really. So the greatest percentage of respondents from that survey was aged 18 to 44 for men from 1995 to 2000. It was about 50.1%, and then '01 to 2005 was 47.6, and then '06 to 2010 45.5. So as far as people responding, it kind of declined over the years. But in women, it was a consistent annual percentage of about 52%. And so by race, in the same 5-year increment that we talked about, it was 89.4%. and then 87.2%, and then 86.4%. So you kind of see a trend of an annual decrease in as far as like participation and respondents from the participants. So the average BMI ranged from 29.7 to 31.8, and diabetes prevalence was highest in all three 5-year increments in ages 65 and older, non-white, and those obese, and among those who did not have a high school diploma, which you can see right here, and then obese, and then their high school degree. These are the ones that actually graduated. And then this is broken down the income. So from 1995 to 2000, diabetes prevalence was higher in women than males. And then the years following, it kind of reversed. So, '01 to '05, '06 to 10, it was the opposite, higher in males than women. Another prevalence of diabetes that showed as the first two periods were a high risk for low annual income, which is right here, low annual income. So the first two periods were as, starting to come down this way. The last period was higher in more of the middle waged income bracket. And then diabetes among Pennsylvania adults increased significantly from 1995 to at a 5.6% initially to, and that right here you'll see is approximately 12.1 million adults to a 10.5% in 2010, approximately 12.7 adults. And then as you can see in this next sentence, where is it at here? It talks about the trend of it being about 0.6% annually higher than the national average. And then if you keep scrolling down, there's more data as far as diabetes prevalence. And then this is, the state Pennsylvania compared to, United States as a whole over the years as far as percentage wise. And you kind of see it's pretty much higher almost every year, except for looks like 1998 was the only year that was lower than the United States average, which, yeah, reflects right here, 5.5, 5.6. So and then the prevalence of obesity in Pennsylvania rose from 16.5% in 1995 to 29% in 2010, and was a 0.8% higher than the annual national average. And that's pretty crazy. And you'll see that right here as well with the association between diabetes and obesity, where the odds ratio is 1 to 1, with the critical value right here of 0.7. P is less than 0.001, and P in this case, if we go down here, before that, here's the obesity prevalence. Looks like 2006 was the only year is lower. That's pretty significant finding right there. Okay, and then as we move along, so you're gonna see the odds ratio that we talked about earlier. Sorry about that. I apologize about that. So the data showed significant differences between sex in 3 different measures. So the relative risk difference, and the odds ratio are all higher in men.